All right, so my claim is that the U.S. public education system does not prepare students for higher education. Now, I've been fortunate enough to attend both public school growing up and private high school. And even though my process for college prep and the whole college application was fairly easy for me through my private high school, I have buddies in the public education system who couldn't even apply to universities because they didn't take the right courses. So, which leads me to my first point. Public high schools treat graduation as the end goal. Which goes, so doing research is clear that the main priority for public high schools is to just get the kids graduated. And college and all that stuff comes second. And according to the National Assessment of Educational Progress, the nationwide high school graduation rate is at 85%, but only 40% is college ready, which I thought was pretty interesting, but which goes back to the fact that public schools do not prioritize educating students on which courses a student needs, and they do not really teach you how to do the FAFSA, how to apply to college, and all that stuff. Which goes to my second point, there's a gap between the knowledge needed to earn a high school diploma and what colleges expect. So each year, more than 500,000 students have to take remedial classes in their community college or their public universities or private universities. For those who don't know, remedial classes are basically the college way of telling you didn't learn what we need you to learn, what you need to learn in high school, so you gotta take this course again, and if you don't pass it, well, at least in Cal Poly, if you don't pass it for the first year, you get kicked out. And because of that, a fact from the New York Times, 30% of students drop out after the first year, which can be from other causes, stress, family problems. But another fact states that the College Atlas reports that 7% of Americans will study at a four-year university, or more than a third of that number will not graduate. And that leads to my third point. Students are not taught the essential skills needed to excel in college. The biggest one being time management. I don't know about you guys, but for me, for sure, when I was in middle school, I was able just to go to the class before, do my homework within 30 minutes, go to the next class, turn it, and repeat every day. And I had buddies who did that all throughout high school. But because of that, because majority of homework assignments in high school are busy work, consisting of memorizing and copying from a textbook, they're used to it. So by the time they get to college, which requires more critical thinking, they can't handle it, and 30% do not graduate. And that wraps up my presentation. Thank you.
All right, well, you identify the proposition, but it's got the negative terminology in that. That's a little complicated because now we're affirming the negative. It doesn't do something, and that's, I think, problematic. That's one of the things we talked about. And we run into that same problem in some of the secondary claims as well, so you got to be a little more careful about that kind of material. The notion that the students who are not succeeding in college, it's because of some failure in the high schools, I think that's a reasonable argument to be making. I do think, however, that you need some stronger proof on it. You just kind of take it as a given that the schools aren't emphasizing enough. There could be lots of reasons that the students are not succeeding that doesn't have anything to do with what the schools are trying to do, but has everything to do with what the students are willing to do. In fact, you mentioned a number of students, you mentioned your classmates who went through the process in doing these kinds of things, and you assert that it's all because of a bunch of busy work that the schools require, as opposed to, critical thinking classes, that sort of thing. But I don't know how true that the case is. I mean, my understanding is that there are a lot of schools that provide a variety of advanced placement classes. They have international baccalaureate. They're always shoving people into college prep coursework. If there's no counseling, that's something that you should be able to document. And there's no reference to counseling at all in this. If students are not told what it is that they're supposed to be taking for classes, that is a problem. But I don't have any evidence that says that they aren't told those kinds of things. That they are not succeeding in their classes, that I think you do a little bit better job of showing because of the number of remedial classes that students have to take. And that's the place where you do have the strongest part of your argument, the demonstration that we have students who are underprepared in college, which seems to suggest that there's something wrong with what's going on in the high schools. But your explanation that the high school is not teaching enough or emphasizing enough the things that students need to have, that's the place where I think you're making a big inferential leap. And I think that's a little bit of a problem. The idea, for example, that the students aren't learning time management skills. The only example you have is your own personal experience on this, and I think that's problematic. So it's underwhelming, the amount of evidence in the argument. The idea behind the argument is probably not a bad one, but it needs to be developed a little bit more. And I think you could maybe keep the argument more generic. Instead of trying to blame that the schools failed to emphasize this, you could say they failed to meet their goals. They are inadequately training students to succeed in college. I think that's a more general statement that's supportable and might be a good modification of the claim to make your argument more reasonable. Okay, thank you.